when people think of the uses for having chickens, typically it stops at eggs or meat, but there's actually a lot of other things that they're really good for. This is exceptionally tall grass, and before we had chickens here, we used to have, even with short grass, we used to have a lot of chiggers. It was chigger infestation, actually. We had so many chiggers that when it rained, there would be black masses of chiggers in the puddles. You would walk outside in 2-inch grass and you'd get probably 15 chiggers on you in less than an hour. And after several years of the chickens being here, we went from chigger infestation the first year to, after 2 years, about normal. And then 5 years, we almost no chiggers. Ticks, we went from a normal amount of ticks to 5 years later, like 0 ticks. Even in this really tall grass. It is amazing what good of a job they can do as far as pest control goes. And a lot of people will actually put them in their garden to help them eat the pests off of the plants. Now, I don't recommend that for young plants. Young plants, look at my diatomaceous earth video. That will help for young plants. But older plants that aren't going to be as subject to the chickens digging them up when they're scratching around, that's the time you want to put them in there, or in the off season if you want them just to kind of eat the bugs at the end of the summer or something after you harvest. But bugs come back pretty quick, so what I'll do is I'll leave the gate open to the garden and I'll let the chickens walk in there as soon as it gets big enough. They'll eat aphids, they'll eat caterpillars, they'll eat... Sadly, if you have some worms in there, they'll eat good things sometimes too, but not so much that it would, have all the good stuff be gone. They tend to just go for whatever they see, and so it's whatever's the most. If you have a whole bunch of aphids and caterpillars and things on the leaves, that's going to attract their attention more than a worm underneath the ground that they don't see, that they would have to look for in order to find. So they're going to go for the easiest, quickest thing before they, would spend too much effort. There isn't a bug that they won't eat. I've even seen them, I kid you not, I've even seen them go for stink bugs, and then that stink bug would, try to defend itself and produce an odor, and then the chicken would back up about, a foot, and then 5 seconds later would decide, oh, that's not that bad, I'll eat it anyway. So, even if they don't swallow it, they'll kill it. And they're actually not that bad. We don't need that in the video. Sorry about that. They're actually not that bad for things like keeping away yellow jackets' nests and things. Their feathers are surprisingly, even though they're feathers, it is very hard for something like a bee to sting them because, they have layers and layers of feathers, and it's almost like a shield. They have extremely hard time penetrating through those feathers. So you'll watch the chickens going after, a nest, and at first you'll get scared because, you think that, well, they're going to get stung. But they rarely ever get stung. If they do start to be pestered by them, they are so persistent that they'll just, run away a few feet and then wait, and then come back. Very little places could they get stung, could they not be able to, get it off themselves, and when they eat them, their tongues, their beaks are very hard, and so it won't sting the inside of their mouth. The only thing that you got to watch out for if you decide to let them try and massacre something like a yellow jacket's nest, you want to make sure that they're not going for the eyes, that they're not, stinging around their face, because that's kind of the most sensitive area that they have, that it doesn't have many feathers on there. Their eyelids and around their cheeks is kind of where, and their ears is where they've got the least protection. So if you do notice something already there, it would be best to monitor and make sure that they're not getting stung. But I've seen them demolish entire yellow jackets nests and not get stung once. So I don't know how they did it, but they did it. Another thing that they do is disperse seeds. If you look at this chicken, she's, picking at the grass seeds. They're very, very good at naturally dispersing seeds. So as far as ecosystem goes, that has a little bit of a benefit as well. And they're super easy keepers. They go in the coop on their own at night. You don't have to train them. They just do it on their own because they have a homing instinct. It's nearing dusk right now, so most of them are starting to go in. Food and water, and make sure they're healthy, and make sure their place is kept clean. They don't need nearly as much attention as a dog. And to me, they still give you a lot of love and just gratitude in their own little chickeny way. Even if they're not too domesticated, even if you can't pet them or pick them up. So, it could even be for the reason of a pet, for what I call pasture pet. Wouldn't necessarily have to lay an egg in their entire life, because they're very interesting to watch and often pretty comical. So, chickens, quail, turkeys, pretty much any kind of fowl, ducks, geese. People don't realize just how much of a therapy that can be to somebody who's either depressed or has anxiety or PTSD. I know for me, it's definitely stress relief to just come home at the end of the day and hang out with the chickens after a really long day or really difficult day. And they come in all sorts of fun colors, and their feathers too. This may not be, something that most people think about, but you can actually sell the feathers as long as you preserve them, clean them, or you can make your own crafts with them. This is a barred rock chicken feather, and almost kind of has a faint marking of like a hawk or owl type marking, or maybe turkey marking, so that's kind of cool. And this is one of our light Brahmas, like dark gray and white. So it's just really cool, feathers. Our black chicken feathers look a lot like crow feathers, and some of our chickens that look sort of more like the wild type coloration actually resemble a little bit pheasant feathers. And if you go to Michael's and you see just how expensive those feathers are, it's ridiculous. So there is substantially, surprisingly, some money in selling feathers. But again, that's probably, something that most people wouldn't really care to do. They drop feathers all the time, so, please don't pick the feathers off of them. That hurts them. Just wait for them to naturally shed the feathers like a dog sheds its fur. I figure I have to mention that for the ignorant people or the naive people. You never know what someone's going to do these days. And I mean, to a certain extent, if you had enough chickens, they do eat a fair amount of grass. They would probably, if you had enough chickens, not too many, because then it would be mud. But if you have enough chickens, they may mow your grass for you, so to speak. And you wouldn't have to mow it either at all or often, because they are somewhat of grazers. You wouldn't think it, but this one, there's no bugs right now. She's just eating some really tender grass. And grass makes up a surprisingly fair amount of their diet when they're free range. That doesn't mean that you can save on food. You still have to feed them just as much, that you would regularly, but the grass is actually really good for them, for their digestive systems. Some people say it makes the eggs taste better. I haven't confirmed that, but I do know that if you have enough of them, they will definitely trim your grass. Now, we keep not enough on purpose because I want them to never out pace the grass. So we've got acres and acres and acres. This grass inside here never gets mowed. And then they've got other grass, so with just 25 chickens and space that huge, I mean, this is huge, you know, and this is just inside the chicken yard. So you can imagine just how many chickens you would need for a space that I have to make the grass short, but, they'd fertilize and, and mow it at the same time because they'd be eating the grass and then they'd be pooping on it. And that comes to our last thing. A lot of people use, yes, chicken poo for fertilizer. Although it is very acidic, so you can't just put a ton in there. You usually have to mix it in with something because that compared to something like cow manure, chicken poo is very, very acidic. So in our garden, we just have a little bit of poo mixed in with mostly regular old garden soil. But it is mixed in, and it does, I think, help, kind of like cow manure does, as long as you use it in moderation. That acidity could kill plants if you put too much in. Who would have thought there was a use for that other than, making you annoyed when you accidentally step in it?